The word chosen for us today for our focus and consideration comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 9 to 15. As it is written, they have freely scattered their gifts to the poor. Their righteousness endures forever. Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. This service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but it is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. Because of the service by which you have proved yourselves, others will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel of Christ, and for your generosity in sharing with them and with everyone else. And in their prayers for you, their hearts will go out to you because of the surpassing grace God has given you. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. This ends our reading. You may be seated.
Thank you, Brad. All right. Welcome to our 5th week of the Red Letter Challenge. This one's on giving, and you just got to hear a wonderful reading about generosity and giving and what God has blessed us with. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to be inspired today. I know I'm looking at a lot of disciples here that are gathered, and I imagine some of you that are tuning in online that are already cheerful givers. I hope this message gives you some things to think about. This is the 40-day challenge of the Red Letter Challenge, and we've noticed that much of what Jesus calls and commands and asks of his disciples can be summarized into 5 principles. If I said BFSGG, do you know what I'm talking about? All right, those of you that are paying attention. So let's do that with us. Let's say being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going. And this week we're on giving. Out of all those principles in the Red Letter Challenge, this one is the one that Jesus brings up the most frequently in the Scriptures. It's also likely that the one that will have the most challenging reaction from the audience. You know, Zach says, this one was one in the reading, if you were getting on to the week of giving, or if you're heading into it this week, he says this is the conclusion he came to. He says, it's impossible to be a stingy Christian. I said that too. I was like, I've known a lot of folks in church. I've been around church since I was a little guy, right? Like I was baptized in it. I was a stingy Christian. Still struggle with that. So that one should make you think a little bit, and that's one you can kind of let stew in you as we go through our word today. To truly follow Jesus means that you're generous. And Jesus talked about giving more than he talked about love, more than he talked about hell, more than he talked about heaven. What's the reason for that? Why would Jesus talk about money so much? Why would he talk about giving as often as he did? It's because people really need wisdom when it comes to their finances, don't they? Many of us live paycheck to paycheck and drowning under debt. I was reading, there were some older statistics in the book, so I went and looked up some other ones, but a 2019 study from Forbes magazine said 78% of people working full-time in America are living paycheck to paycheck. 78%. That same year, 2019, Go Banking Rates study reported 45% of Americans said they have zero in their savings account. 45% said they had zero. Another 24% that they had less than $1,000 in their savings account. Is it possible in a country as wealthy as we are, as prosperous as we are, with the freedoms that we have, that 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in a savings account? Is that possible? We are one of the wealthiest nations in the world. But with those kind of numbers, they show us that no matter how wealthy you are, you may struggle with saving and spending, giving. You find dealing with money a challenge? That's why we talk about it. In our culture today, financial stress is completely normal. Number one listed cause of breakups in marriage is money and money issues. It's normal. Having monthly payments is normal. Debt is normal. Do you know that normal numbers that I found were between 90 and 120,000? So there's a number of different websites I was going to. $90 and $120,000 is normal. And that includes student loans and credit cards and personal loans. Is it no wonder why people don't like talking about money? Money causes worry, anxiety, and fear, especially in a slowed economy. And sadly, financial problems, they fracture relationships, not just marriages. But think about it. Have you ever had a child ask you for money? Have you ever had a parent needing a loan? we got some of these things. I'm kind of hitting on some. It can break down relationships when a sibling calls and said they need some help. But it even causes problems with friends. It causes problems in employer-employee relationships. Can I get an advance? Do I need to go get a payday loan? That's why we're talking about money today. Our church embraces the fact that we're not normal. You've met our pastor, you know me. We're not normal. We're trying not to be normal, and we're kind of proud of it. It's not just flamingos, right? I mean, I'm wearing flannel today. First time. I got boots on, and they're waterproof. That's not normal for me. I hope to go hiking someday. No, I'm kidding. I've been hiking. So we can talk about money. Money sometimes seems heavy, right? But what I guess the point is that it's not a topic to be beat up by. You heard some of those statistics, and many of you probably went, well, that's not me. Yeah, I know. I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to them, and I'm talking to your kids, and I'm talking to your grandkids, and I'm talking to my kids that are sitting in this room. So the message is crafted for everybody, and hopefully it makes a difference for everybody. Because what we find is that normal is not working. Normal is not working if normal is debt, if normal means no savings, if normal means no giving. The Bible teaches us what to do about times when we're stuck. If you feel like you can't give a tithe, or you feel like, I don't know, I'm one of those people that's struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. See what the Word says. Take a look at this. Luke 21. It says, as Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. Truly I tell you, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All of these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put all she had to live on. When I ask a group of people to talk about a biblical character other than Jesus that represents generosity, you know what they mention? The unnamed widow. Isn't that amazing? What she gave was less than what amounts to 2/5 of a penny. And we're talking about her 2,000 years later. Because of her heart, her joy for giving. Do you find yourself in a situation where you can't give? Where you doubt that your giving will make any difference? I can guarantee you your giving will make a difference. It may not change a $500,000 church budget very much, but your giving will change you. It can very well change the people around you. The Bible account reminds us that God welcomes that sacrificial generosity. Sacrificial generosity will show you where to place your trust. Are you trusting in you, or your money, or your possessions, or are you trusting in God? If you are there, where should you begin? The Old Testament gives us that law, that 10% that says it's a tithe, it's off the top. Give this to God, because all of it's from Him. This is a way to recognize that. So bring your harvest into the temple. Now, we don't have a harvest, so many of us. Not too many farmers here. But it's what God has blessed you with. Bring in 10%. And then He asks His followers to test Him. Read this, Malachi. This should be familiar too. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. It used to be given to the Levites, right? The priestly class, the church leaders. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. Test me. Do you believe God when He says to test Him? If you aren't a regular giver, if you don't tithe, I want to challenge you this week to become a more generous person, to pray about it, to increase your sacrificial giving, to make a regular gift, which means maybe you saw it on before. There's a button on our website if you want to give to this ministry that you can sign up to give regularly, meaning maybe it's once a month for you or every other week. So you don't forget about it. It doesn't become second. Setting that as a priority when you're making your budget, when you're living your life. Maybe it's to increase your giving 2% this year. That's a place to start. Maybe, it doesn't have to be here. Maybe it can be to a Christian radio station. I heard a pledge drive this week. Maybe it's to Compassion Kid. In our Sunday school, we're giving offerings. For those of you that go up to Kids Community after church today, we give our offerings to support a child, well, now a young man. Maybe it's to give in support of missionaries. You may hear about that today. I hope that inspires you to give. So it's not a matter of where, it's recognizing that it's to God's use, for God's purpose. It's great to serve with your hands and your feet. It's great to meet the needs of others. And if you can do that, I hope you continue to. But this week happens to be talking about giving in our Red Letter Challenge. So I want to tell you a story about how that happens. See, my Grandma Durkin, my dad grew up in, I think I told you about him, he grew up in Pittsburgh suburb. Grandma Durkin was a wife of a steel worker. Their house was about, the size of this stage area. Not really. Maybe 1,000 square feet. They lived there his whole life. Didn't have a whole lot. There's a lot of negativity in the marriage and things like that, but that's not the point. They didn't have many prized possessions. But when my grandmother passed, she did give me and my brother a gift. We got about $3,000. And to a 17-year-old, that was a lot of money. To some of you might go, that's not too much. For me, it was hard seeing my grandmother die of cancer. But knowing that she wanted to show us some care and love and support meant that I wanted to do something good with that money. I was 17. I could have blown it on all kinds of stuff. But I wanted to respect her life. Let her know that that gift means something to me. And so, you'll see that that gift kind of changed my life. What's the most precious gift you could give someone? Imagine you're making a will, and you wanted your most important gift to go to the loved ones around you, to have the most meaning. What would you give them? I'll ask you to actually share that in a minute, but just whisper it to somebody or write it down, so be prepared. My grandma's gift changed my life, and I don't even think she intended it to. See, with some of the money, I got this. Sweet ride. Yeah. Jealous much? This 1989 Nissan Sentra could be yours. $2,400 or so. I got that car. That car became my trip back and forth to college car. That car became my working a couple of jobs to get through college car. I remember driving to Concordia University, Chicago, in that car, and learning how to teach people about the love of Jesus Christ. Was that my grandmother's intention? At Concordia, Chicago, I also met my beautiful wife there. That car took me. I remember one year, it took me to visit Mary, too. I lived in upstate New York, in Rochester, and I wanted to see her in Central Illinois, and I was going to go meet up with her. We were going to pack up the stuff and go up to college. We'd been dating for a while. I drove 14 hours in that car in one trip. No stops. Well, stops. I had stops. Restroom was needed. But it was 14 hours pretty much straight. I remember getting to Mary's house, and she says, "What happened to you?" It turns out, when you drive a car 14 hours with the window down and your arm out, you got a half a sunburn. There's a sunburn that goes here over and down this arm. Hey, some of you, raise your hand if you've done that before. I knew we'd have a couple. All right. So the funny thing is, the ironic thing is, I didn't need to do that. I had air conditioning. I could have left the window up. I could have been nice. I was just trying to save on gas money. I was trying to be frugal because the AC made it use a little more gas. Well, that's silly. So I did. I had burn and bubbles and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I love you, babe. Give me a hug. The second thing I did with the money is I took the rest of it and put it into a mutual fund. A mutual fund was something I was learning about in college. That was in my freshman classes about finances, and that was all about how do I take what I've got and multiply it. Well, it happened to be a good deal. I learned to watch it grow, and at some of those years it earned 24% in this mutual fund opportunity. So I guess the car wasn't all that expensive, because I know I at least had like $1,300 in that mutual fund. That mutual fund got divided and split up, and that fund today is worth $78,000. And no, that's not true. I wish it were. I think I sold that one pretty well. But this is more potent. This is more powerful. I would have loved to hold on to it, but it's not true. After about 4 years, I had that. It was $1,300 in that account, turned into $2,700, with a little bit more adding by me. And wouldn't you know it, that $2,700 was just what Concordia Chicago needed to let me come back for my senior year. I think I had like $6 to spare. Here I was sweating it. God works in mysterious and wonderful ways. Money's a tool, right? It's amoral. But money can take you places that you can't go. Do you think my grandmother had any idea that her money was going to take me to all those places I mentioned to you? Not a bit. Do you think she had any idea that money was going to be an investment for me that would lead to me completing my education. No idea. But I hope she was able to see it in some way. No. See, I don't really know where my grandmother's faith is. So I won't know the answer to that question until we're all raised again. That, to me, is the most important gift you can give. Do you know how you contribute money to a child and you're sponsoring somebody in a far-off country and that's going to help them? I supported a child in Haiti for a number of years, had the opportunity to go meet that child. That's pretty cool, too, is to see that person that you've just been given a little bit to. And do you know, many of us will never meet these folks that we're supporting and praying for and giving to, but you can be changing their lives. What's the most precious gift you can give somebody? Is it money? Is it a kidney? Is it your house? Take a minute and either write it down on your page or lean next to somebody and tell them just to get 30 seconds or less. Go. What's the most precious gift you could give somebody that you have? Go to it. And if you're online, you can write it down on a page in front of you. All right. I love the whispers. For those of you that don't hear it at home, everybody said, never mind, I was going to give, there's no consensus. So I just wanted you to be thinking about that. So much of what we talk about giving, it's important for me to just stir the pot and let you and God figure out how it all lands, all right? That's real important for me. Earlier today, we discussed where to begin if you weren't tithing, if you didn't feel like you had much, if you're living paycheck to paycheck. What about those of us that are well-to-do, the top 1% in the world with income and how we manage resources? Well, the tithe is an Old Testament kind of law construct as a basis. I want you to be thinking about grace giving. Grace giving is a goal for disciples of Jesus. When we become satisfied talking about 10%, we're actually in danger of dismissing God from the rest of it. The question is not, how much can I keep? The question is, how much can I give? I read a book called Money, Possessions, and Eternity. You're going to hear a few things about it. Now, it's by an author named Randy Alcorn. For me, it was one of those times in my life, if you aren't familiar, that gives you an opportunity to hear from somebody who's a pastor and a minister, but also has had a great impact on the world. Randy's an author of many, many books, but what he's decided to do was, and it was convicting for me, and I'm not there yet, but what he decided was he was going to take a certain amount of income, and he and his family were going to live on that. Then all the money that comes back from the resources that he sells or that comes in above that, he's going to give away. And he's been doing that for years and years. When I think about a financial goal, that's mine. To get to the point where I'm a steward of God's resources, where we can kind of live on something reasonable and give the rest away. Because I love giving. It's kind of what makes us really tough at doing saving real well. And I'm okay with that. We'll get there someday. Whenever you start to feel comfortable with your level of giving, it's probably time to raise it again. Because we talked about that idea that needs to be sacrificial. Off the top. Here's a quote from Randy. Tithing isn't something I do to clear my conscience so I can do whatever I want with the 90%. It all belongs to God. I must seek His direction and permission for whatever I do with the full amount that I may discover what God has, that God has different ideas than I do. It isn't about managing the 10%, giving the 10% so I can do whatever I want. God has increased your income to increase your standard of giving. You think God increased your income so you could increase your standard of living? That's the way we kind of live. That's not the God I read in the Word. And I want you to be challenged by that today. The Bible tells us what God intends, so we don't have to wander. Take a look at this. You will be enriched in every way. We heard it in our opening reading. You'll be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, as though and through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. Through the people, they'll be able to bless others. You'll be able to make an impact. Your money will go places you never thought possible. Another Alcorn quote, God comes right out and tells us why he gives us more than we need. It's not so that we can find more ways to spend it. It's so that we can indulge ourselves. And it's not so we can indulge ourselves. It's not so we can spoil our children. It's not so we can insulate ourselves from needing God's provision. It's so we can give and give generously. Almost everyone in our lives has a scarcity mindset. Will I ever have enough? Do I have a big enough place? Do I have enough of a gift to give? Where's my next income coming from? And we operate in that. That things are in short supply, and whatever we have won't last. But the gospel calls us to an abundant life, to one that's full of smiles and joy, to one that's full of money and possessions managed rightly for God's work, where things flow through us and into the world, that we might be a blessing to others. You know, to challenge you, I wanted to share with you what can happen when you start to look at your lives abundantly, like we have plenty. Take a look at this.
My wife and I met in college, and she's an actuary, so she sets the rates that agents charge for insurance. I'm a CPA by trade. I started in public accounting and now have been at Sears Holdings Corporation for 13 years.
So we both have been blessed to be in careers where we're able to make a good living, and we've been able to take some really amazing steps in our journey as a result.
Our pastor talked about an individual who had a gift for generating a lot of income, and he had capped himself at a certain point, and as additional funds came in, he just gave them away.
When he gave to the church, he gave so generously that a lot of his friends and family told him that he was crazy, and so he asked Bill to just remind him every now and then that he wasn't crazy for giving to the level that he gives.
That was something that my wife and I really resonated with, so we just began our journey of really looking at our resources as something that truly wasn't ours, and how could we manage them well and be able to give more of them.
We're trying to figure things out, what it was going to look like for us. So we decided that we wanted to live simply, to cap what we were spending each month, and to be able to give freely beyond that whenever a need arose.
So we have managed our finances in a way that we could pay off our house, we can pay off our cars.
We cut cable, we cut our home phone line, we've just simplified things.
A lot of people ask us, why don't you get your new car, why don't you get a bigger house? And it's created some great conversations that we can say, you know, we don't need bigger, we don't need newer, we can live simply off of what we have, and that gives us the ability to give and more freely and to things that God's put on our heart.
So every time another dollar comes in beyond what we were already living off of, we have the freedom to use it to help other people. So when someone needs help, We want people to know that they can come to us and we have the ability to help them. And instances have arisen where friends or family have needed help with medical bills, and we've been able to help them.
Yeah, obviously in this culture, our kids are bombarded with all kinds of messages of they need this, they need that.
And it's hard because we don't really want to feed into that. We want them to see that they can live differently. One thing that we decided to do this year was to give them $100 to give away. We wanted to see where their heart was, where their passion lied. When we've been out at restaurants, the kids have picked families in the restaurant where we would pick up the tab for their lunch, and they used their $100 that we gave them to be able to give away. We want our kids to see the difference that they can make with their little lives.
Definitely by setting a cap and having these resources that we can give, not only does it free us up to listen to God's whisper and to be able to respond more easily, but there's been so many amazing instances that had we not made the decision to become debt-free and give freely, we would have missed out on.
I wanted to be challenged by that. I was, when I've seen it. And I think it's great to know that there's people with families that are doing this, that are just being different than the world, because what's been isn't working. What we've been doing isn't working. If our ushers could bring some forms forward. I have a couple of ushers I've asked to help out with that. This would be a good time. What I'm going to do here today is one of the things that I realized when I was young was that when you just talk about giving in a sermon, what happens? In one ear, out the other. When you just talk about it for these 25 minutes or so, all that stuff can go away. So these guys are going to pass these out. These are covenants. But the thing I want you to know, and if you want one and you're watching us online, the thing I want you to know about them is it's not for us to collect. I don't want to know what you're given. I want you to be challenged. So just take someone passing down the aisles, and I want you to take this home. I want you to read it. It has some of the scriptures we talked about earlier today. I want you to be challenged to think about some of those concepts that we shared here. There's a place to sign it, but the only person that's a benefit to is you, or your family, or your conscience. Money, talking about money can be offensive. I get that. But hopefully you've seen today that we are concerned because spiritually we know this, that whatever you fear and love and trust in above all else, well, that becomes your God and mine. So what we want to do with our money and possessions, I want you to do it what this slide says. My final one. It says, what we do with our money and possessions will influence the very course of eternity. You can give and support the gospel outreach here. You can give and support missionaries there. You can give and support children where you want. You can give and support so many wonderful organizations. I want you to see your work, your challenge to influence the very course of eternity. Bible verse said this: others will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession to the gospel of Christ, and for your generosity in sharing with them and with everyone else. We want people to see our obedience and glorify the Lord, not us. Amen. Everything that we have is a gift from God. We are blessed to manage all of His gifts, including that first 10%, and we operate with a gospel mentality toward giving from our abundance. Amen.